All right, so today we are looking at 9.2, and hopefully we'll look at 9.3 as well. So 9.2 is communicable and non-communicable diseases. So what does that mean? So communicable diseases, these are diseases that are caused by pathogens, and when we say they're communicable, it means that the pathogen carrying the disease can spread from one organism to another. So examples are the flu, the common cold, and AIDS. They are all examples of communicable diseases. Again, it's because they can be spread from one organism to another. And then non-communicable diseases are the diseases that are not caused by pathogens, and they cannot be passed from one organism to another. So for example, diabetes. All right, you're not going to catch diabetes from another person. All right, so let's just take a look at this chart. This is from the textbook. This is communicable diseases and effects on health. So let's take a look at how these are spread, sample diseases, and the type of pathogen that causes it, and the effects of the disease. So airborne, that is how communicable diseases can be spread. Is one method is airborne, such as coughing, sneezing. First sites of infection are the nose, throat, and lungs. Examples, common cold from a virus, the influenza flu, which is also from a virus. Effects of the common cold, runny nose, a sore throat, coughing, a low-grade fever, and then effects of the influenza or the flu virus, fever, aches and pains, cold-like symptoms, and extreme fatigue. A next method of how these communicable diseases can be spread is waterborne. So it's from contaminated water. So this disease, it'll often spread through feces that contain bacteria. So feces from infected humans or animals can end up in the water system. So think about like swimming pools and hot tubs, as well as streams and ponds. So a couple examples, dysentery, which is from a bacteria, effects of it, severe cramps, diarrhea, often with blood and mucus, there's fever and vomiting. E. coli 0157, another bacteria, effects, there's cramps, bloody diarrhea, and there can be extreme complications like kidney failure. Another method that these diseases are spread is carried in food. So from unsafe food handling, improper methods used to preserve food, so not refrigerating it correctly or on time, and improper storage of food. So two examples here. The first one is botulism. It's a form of food poisoning, but it's from a bacteria. Effects, double vision, difficulty speaking, breathing, and swallowing. Another example, salmonellosis. It's a form of food poisoning. Again, it is from a bacteria. And effects, fever, headache, nausea, vomiting, and diarrhea. Another method of spreading these communicable diseases is direct contact. So this is direct contact with an infected person or with the materials that were handled by an infected person. So example, meningitis. This is from a bacteria and virus. Severe headaches, high fever, vomiting, stiffness in the neck, and joint pains. And another example is STDs. These are sexually transmitted diseases from bacteria and viruses. So these effects will vary according to the disease, but will often include sores, irregular discharge, and itching. So the importance of a clean environment is very important because diseases can be spread by air, water, food, and contact. So clean environments reduce the number of viruses and bacteria present. So as a result, there are fewer pathogens to make us sick. So when we talk about sanitary, This means maintaining clean, germ-free conditions to help prevent disease. So some environments, such as bathrooms, have to be super clean. So reason being, there's many pathogens that are associated with human feces. So bathrooms have to be sanitary meaning maintaining clean, germ-free conditions to help prevent disease. So this form of cleaning, usually there's special cleaners such as chlorine and antibacterial soaps to eliminate most of the bacteria and viruses. Sanitary cleaning and handling practices should be used in all environments where there's a chance of high numbers of bacteria and viruses. And people who work with food, they should be wearing protective gloves when they're handling food to avoid spreading pathogens to people who will eat the food that they're going to serve. They also need to handle food carefully to prevent food poisoning, because food poisoning does result from eating food that's infected with harmful microorganisms. And eating that food can make a person very ill. It can also be fatal. Salmonella comes from foods containing chicken, and so foods containing chicken can become contaminated with bacteria if they are not handled properly. So to prevent salmonellosis, chicken needs to be kept hot or cooled rapidly after it's cooked thoroughly. And chicken that's not eaten right away should be refrigerated. How do you get a non-communicable disease? All right, so these are the ones that cannot be caught from organism to organism. Many non-communicable diseases are the result of bad environmental conditions, poor diets, unhealthy lifestyles, and genetics. All right, so here in the first figure is looking at polluted air. So whether or not you smoke, it's probably in your home because it's difficult to circulate fresh air inside a building. So exposure to polluted air, example from cigarettes, it can cause diseases such as emphysema. Emphysema is a lung condition in which breathing becomes more and more difficult. Here we're looking at the diet. So if you're eating like foods like this once in a while, it's okay. But if this is what you're eating regularly, then you have a poor diet. And people with poor diets often suffer from high levels of sickness. For example, if it's a diet high in fat and cholesterol, it can cause heart disease. And in heart disease, blood flow to the arteries supplying the heart becomes more and more restricted, which will have an effect on the heart. All right, here we're looking at basically inactivity. So here we're looking at balancing the amount of downtime with active exercise. So lack of exercise can result in obesity. People who are 10% over the ideal body weight for their height and bone structure are obese. And then being obese, it strains your heart's ability to function, and it increases your chances of developing type 2 diabetes. And lastly, genetics. These are the characteristics that you inherit from your birth parents. Genetic factors are associated with disease like cystic fibrosis, which damages the respiratory and digestive systems. And exercise may benefit people with cystic fibrosis by improving their strength and endurance. All right, so that's it for 9.2. These are the questions for 9.2 on page 165. So 9.3 is who is most likely to get sick. So here we're looking at Sierra Leone versus Canada. And so in Canada, the average female can expect to live about 81 years, and the average male will likely live to about 75. And in Sierra Leone, which is an African country, the average female will live to about 35 years, and the average male lives to about 33 years. All right, reason being, Canada is a wealthy country, so most Canadians, they have enough food, they have clean water to drink, the air is relatively unpolluted, there's proper health care, there's access to public education, and majority of adult Canadians also have paying jobs. People in Sierra Leone live in poverty, meaning they have access to few or none of these things that we just talked about. Their basic needs for food, water, healthcare, and education are not met. So here in this chart, we can see the numbers of communicable diseases, 42% in Sierra Leone versus 6% in Canada. Non-communicable diseases is 47% versus 86% in Canada. All right. So children born in poor countries, they often die of starvation because they don't have enough to eat. So they're also more likely to get a communicable disease because there's little health care. They can often also die from such illnesses. And those who do survive to adulthood continue to be more likely to get a communicable disease. In Canada, we have pollution control plants that purify our drinking water. In poor countries, drinking water comes directly from streams and rivers, and it may be full of bacteria, viruses, and parasites. Here are just some worldwide statistics about people high risk for disease. More than 1 billion people lack clean water. More than 2 billion people lack toilets. Every year, nearly 1 billion people suffer from illnesses caused by contaminated water. And it's the young and the elderly that are the most at risk. And over half of the children that die every year die from malnutrition. So what are your risk factors? So no matter where you live, the same risk factors increase your chance of getting sick. So not eating properly or getting proper nutrition, drinking unclean water, not having a toilet, not practicing personal hygiene, such as washing hands frequently, having sex, which will increase chances of STDs, smoking tobacco, and consuming alcohol. All right, so those are the risk factors. So risk factors and disease. So for example, not eating properly, possible diseases, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, tuberculosis. And the source of risk is economic and social. Drinking unclean water, possible diseases like diarrhea, parasites, E. coli. Source of risk, it's an economic risk. Not having a toilet, possible diseases, diarrhea, tuberculosis, and parasites is an economic source of risk. Not practicing personal hygiene, such as washing hands frequently, possible diseases, tuberculosis, food poisoning, this is economic and social. Having sex, possible diseases, AIDS and STDs, source of risk, it's social. Smoking, tobacco, possible diseases, emphysema, bronchitis, respiratory conditions, lung cancer, other circulatory diseases. It's a source of risk is social. And then consuming excess alcohol can lead to liver disease, dementia, malnutrition, and the source of risk is social. All right, this diagram here, so natural disasters like this flood and ice damage in Badger, Newfoundland in 2003 resulted in sanitation problems. So septic systems may overload, and then once the ice thaws and water runoff will now provide breeding grounds for bacteria and viruses. So as a result, the victims may have limited access to clean water. As well, large numbers of people that are injured may overload medical facilities, and then people may get infections from the unsanitary conditions. In poor countries, all of these problems are worse. So in addition, food supplies may not be handled or stored properly, and as a result, those can become contaminated as well. Right, and that concludes 9.3. So the questions for 9.3 are on page 167.